Stefanie Powers is with us this morning, and we were just chatting about cricket, and the feminists are going to be furious about this, but I'm afraid, Imran, many men have tried in the past to explain the rules of cricket to me, and it's just nightmarish. I mean, would you like to attempt? I mean...
Well, look, I do admit that it's one of the hardest games to explain. And I mean, I played my first international, and I wasn't fully aware of the rules when I was 18. I mean, there was one particular LBW rule which I wasn't aware of. So I would assume it's very difficult to make anyone understand who hasn't played the game.
What about an American, Stephanie? I mean, what do you reckon
The whole
to it?
thing is just, it's madness. Who wrote the rules? Who was it? Why is it called a test? Why is it a test match? Is it something that is preparing you for something more, or is it? I never quite understood that.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I mean, why it's called a test match, I don't know.
And you carry on. What I can't understand is you're supposed to play, is it five games in the test series? I'm probably going to get into real trouble here, girls.
No, it's every test is over 5 days.
Right.
And there are 5 test matches in the series.
Right. But you carry on playing to the end, even when you know who's won, don't you? You do, don't you?
It does sound silly when you put it like that, doesn't it, Imran? Be fair.
Yeah, no, you stop when someone wins.
Yeah. Just out of interest, when the rain pours down, I've always wanted to know, isn't it cripplingly boring, and all those hours and hours and hours that you boys have to spend in the dressing room? What do you actually do?
Now, everyone has something different. I mean, some read newspapers, people watch television. I don't know, it's varied, depends on the individual, but it is very boring.
What do you do?
He watches Heart to Heart.
I don't know. It depends on the situation. Like in Manchester, most of the time I was praying for more rain because we were about to lose, or we weren't quite a...
It looks
not about to
not
lose,
playing
but,
for rain, because you've got a big match to play, haven't you?
Yes, no, we're playing for the sun to come out. We mustn't forget to thank the Mayfair Hotel, because without the Mayfair Hotel, we wouldn't be doing this match at all.
We better explain what this match is, Stephanie, for people just tuned in.
This is the second all-ladies polo match in the history of England. And we would never have even done the first one if the Mayfair Hotel hadn't decided that they thought it would be great fun. And we all got together. One lady who is playing is your Claire Tomlinson, who is rated the highest female player in the world. I know she doesn't like to be put in that context because Claire doesn't exclusively play with women. Neither do any of us. We play mixed games most of the time. It's rare when everybody gets together for only a women's tournament. It's
interesting, actually, because cricket is one of those sports that women always end up being on the defensive about, because there are women's cricket teams, but obviously they're not anything like as successful or as prominent as the men's teams. And tennis as well, and they say, oh, well, you know, the men are much better than the women in tennis. And yet riding is an arena where women do just as well as men.
That's because 85% of it is the horse.
Yes, I must say, I mean, we didn't want to be sexist about it, but John Lloyd told us on Saturday, didn't he, that when he played Chris Evert in little practice matches, the score was nearly always 6-love, which is no criticism of Chris Evert, but a fact. I mean, have you ever played cricket against women, Imran?
No.
You haven't seen our test elections, have you?
No, actually, I just once watched, when I was in university, I watched the women's cricket team practicing. And this was a long time ago, and they relied more on strength than skill. I haven't really. In Pakistan, unfortunately, there's not a women's cricket team, so...
Well, Imran, good to meet you. We hope you don't do too well, but we hope you do pretty well. I think that's the message. But you'll be joining us again in after 9. For intimate revelations, we hope. Thanks for the moment, anyway. We must take a very quick break, must we not? I think, yes.
We must. Hello again. Giles is looking particularly spectacular this morning, I have to say.
Well, with you here and Stefanie Powers, I certainly have come dressed to kill. Marvellous. It's very exciting to get the hots for somebody so brilliant and beautiful so early in the day.
Oh, well, I fairly blush.
Good morning.
I fairly blush.
Hush my mouth.
Hush my mouth.
Good morning, Britain. In case you've just joined us, my name's Giles Brandreth, and this is Video Report, the moment in the week when we like to feel that exuberant and exultant propensities and phraseology contribute to the cerebral extradition of malefactors guilty of philological pyrotechnics that merely reveal an infectious proclivity for polysyllabic interchange that perceptibly transcends the surreptitious sanctuary of banal, if benign, blandiloquence. Am I sounding sophisticated? Am I,
Have you started yet?
am I looking sophisticated? What do you
no.
think? Well, I want to, because, of course, today it's Royal Ascot, and I'll be there, yes, mixing with the rich and famous, the glitzy, the ritzy, super sophisticated set, and I want to sound the part, and I want to look the part. And to put me in the mood, and to share the mood with you, I've been wallowing in a video that explores the dazzling but dangerous world of the jet-set literati. Yes, Britain, I've been soaking in super sophistication by watching hour upon hour of the latest multi-million-dollar miniseries to hit the video counters. It's called I'll Take Manhattan.
I don't know whether you're aware of this, but you know, Heart to Heart is still being seen all over Britain at various times.
Isn't that nice? That's nice. I'm so sorry it's over.
Well, it just it actually finished. You actually finished filming it. The series
We
ended
were
when?
fired 3 years ago,
fired.
yes, literally.
How did you hear about that? Was it brutal or was it kind?
No, it was brutal. It was desperately brutal. We were held in the dark until the morning of the day before they were going to announce what's called the fall lineup, which means all the shows that will be on the networks in the fall, and we were conspicuously absent. And that was how we all learned. And it was a crushing blow because we had wonderful plans for the new season. Everybody seemed to be enthusiastic about it, and Jennifer was going to get pregnant, and we were going to have all these sort of running things, and it was going to be great fun.
What was the reason for it? Simply the ratings, or did they just feel it had run its course?
I think it had something to do with musical executives.
Musical executives?
Yes, you know the game?
They're playing musical chairs?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. And, you know, as oftentimes happens, when a new man comes into a situation and he decides he wants to imprint his identity on the network, he made what wound up being a fatal error of canceling 7 hours of primetime programming that people watched, albeit perhaps not in the 40-share range. But we were one of those that got axed.
Well, we're still watching.
Was it in fact good for you, in the sense that sometimes you expect something to go on forever, and then when you're cut short, it turns out to be an opportunity in disguise?
Well, one will never know. I don't necessarily prescribe to that notion that when one is identified with something, that it's definitely a negative aspect. If I want to perform in a different fashion, and there's an opportunity to do so in the theater, I do indulge myself. But when we speak about television, we're speaking about a medium that tends to come into people's homes. And if you acknowledge that the old star system was designed when the studios were big and they made Clark Gable movies, yes, it was a narrow spectrum, the sort of persona that he portrayed in films. But nevertheless, it guaranteed the person that was going to put down their money to buy a ticket to go in and see that film, that they were going to have a certain emotional response. That's why they looked at the name on the marquee. Television sort of did the same sort of thing.
I suppose in a way people would say, oh, well, you know, that's the price of fame. You're up there in lights and you get all the glamour and everything.
Glamour?
And it is, that's what people
Where?
think, isn't it?
Where was that? I missed that part.
Well,
I've
it did
always
seem
managed
glamorous.
to miss that part.
It did seem glamorous. I mean, the
Well,
series.
no, we worked 14 hours a day, you know, for 9.5 months a year. I always thought of it as an overdue pregnancy, you know.
And also, it'd be difficult for you now, I suspect. You had such incredible rapport with Robert Wagner. I suppose you could now go through half a lifetime to get the same rapport on the screen with another actor.
Well, I think the point is that one doesn't try, you know. I mean, once having done it for 5 years, I think it would be sort of fruitless to keep searching for that same rapport.
You were shattered then. How long did it take you to actually emerge from, I suppose, what can be called...
Well, I was working at the time. I was doing a miniseries in Paris called Mistral's Daughter for Judith Krantz.
which we saw, yes.
And so I was occupied, at least, and I think it was a delayed reaction, and indeed delayed for all of us, because I didn't realize how much I sort of suffered from the loss until I went back to Los Angeles.
But people still see it, I mean, it was all over the world, wasn't it? It's so incredibly
65
popular.
countries.
Was there anywhere in the world you could escape where people didn't recognise you?
Oh, yes, in Kenya.
Lord's Cricket Ground.
Yes, perhaps. Yes, that's somewhere outside of the world, isn't it?
Oh, if you could have a leading man other than Robert Wagner or Clark Gable from the whole history of the cinema, who would you have? Present company accepted.
Yes. Oh, who would I have had?
As your leading man, if we could create this for
Oh,
you.
dear. Gary Cooper.
Gary
Really?
Cooper.
In the 30s, as he was in Fountainhead. Dishy.
There's a thought.
Well, in that great...
Lovely.
Would that it could be
Hollywood in
arranged.
the Sky.
Would
Yeah,
that
we'll
it
see
could be
what, we'll see
arranged.
what we
for
can do. We'll take a break. Hello, we're chatting to Stefanie Powers this morning, and Giles is still with us. And just before the break, we were talking about ideal men. And there is an ideal man for you. But you mentioned earlier William Holden, who you had a long relationship with, and I wondered, do you believe in this soulmates idea, that there is somebody out there who is a sort of perfect match for you?
I think he was, yes.
Do you think? Did you know that as soon as you met him?
Pretty much so, yes. I think lightning struck. It was an unusual communication. I mean, it was very, very special. There was an age difference between us, but curiously enough, since I started very young in this industry, that system was still very much around, that he, in fact, had been through as well. So there were an awful lot of the same combatants that were still hanging around when I was in the business. So we had lots of things in common with the business, but we had more things in common as human beings.
You mentioned starting in the business very young, and you were brought up in Hollywood, but your parents weren't in the movie business.
No.
How on earth did you think of getting into it then?
Well, it was quite by accident. I danced in a ballet company, and we were always going out on, interviews just for fun, calls for new shows that were coming into town and all this. And a girlfriend of mine who was slightly older and she could drive, she had a car, we would always go tromping around. We were both very tall. I was about 14, 15 years old, the same size I am now. And we would always be kept till the very end, and our parents, my mothers used to laugh, and they'd say, oh yes, well, they'll be kept to the very end because no one ever looks at a dancer's face, until they'd suddenly come around with their little checkboard and say, how old are you? Out, you know? But I auditioned for a film called, stage play, and then all the same people worked in the film, called West Side Story. And that's how it all started. I danced for Jerome Robbins.
You couldn't have started with a better vehicle, really, could you?
No, it was an incredible baptism of fire, though.
It must have been really scary, though. I mean, having the front to kind of get there in the first place is one thing, but when you actually have to do it...
Well, it's amazing, you know. It really is amazing how little you think of those things when you're that young. You just sort of do it. Like, oh, well, all right. Cocky young kid, you know, they just sort of bounce around and without really thinking of what if, or am I, or could that be, or how is this being interpreted?
Well, the rest, as they say, is history. We must say, sadly, we must say goodbye now, but not before we mentioned that you're playing for the Mayfair Cup.
Yes.
And where and when?
Royal Berkshire Polo Club on Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, I shall be there.
You should be there. All
Absolutely.
gentlemen
Mayfair
will
Cup?
be.
Oh, I shall certainly be there.
Well, you've got the outfit for it,
I
Giles.
feel so, absolutely. Oh,
We
yes.
feel very underdressed, actually.
On my donkey.
Thanks very much indeed,
My
Stefanie Powers. Great
pleasure.
to see you.